Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this month's People Talks. I'm Ashley Zimmerman, and I am the Business Development Rep for our West Office with People Care Health Services.
And I'm Christy Post. I'm the lead RN with People Care Health Services, and we're really glad to have you.
Yes, we are going to do another Facebook Live event with you guys, but we are going to show you a TED Talks video. In this video that we're going to be showing you guys, and then we'll have an open discussion live afterwards, is the hidden role informal caregivers play in healthcare by Scott Williams. And kind of something that stood out to me during his presentation was one of his very first statements that he announced was, let's put the care back into healthcare. So that's kind of a little teaser on what we're going to be showing you guys and discussing. What are your thoughts, Christy?
I think what resonated for me is we have caregivers that are in the home, obviously. Some are connected because of their relationship, and sometimes people are placed in there and they build the relationship with the clients. But caregiving is a really, really important job, and it takes a lot of effort and compassion and empathy. And so I applaud all of our caregivers, and I thought this might resonate with different people, particularly the caregivers. So we hope you enjoy it, and we'll chat about it afterwards live.
Yes. Stay tuned. Thank you, guys.
Let's put the care back into healthcare. I've been working in the healthcare sector for the last 15 years, and one of the things that drew me to this sector was my interest in the care component of our healthcare systems. More specifically, to the invaluable role played by carers. Now, how many of you in this room consider yourself a carer? By this, I mean how many of you have cared for someone suffering from an illness, injury, or disability? Can you raise your hand if this is the case? About half of the room. I want to thank all of you who raised your hands for the time that you spent as a carer. What you do is extremely precious. I am a former cared for patient myself. When I was a teenager, I suffered from Lyme disease and underwent 18 months of antibiotic treatment. I was repeatedly misdiagnosed. Bacterial meningitis, fibromyalgia, you name it, they couldn't figure it out. And if I'm standing here in front of you today, it's because I owe my life to the stubbornness and commitment of one carer. He did everything he could for me, driving long distances from one treatment center to another, searching for the best option, and above all, never giving up, despite the difficulties he encountered, including from a work and quality of life perspective. That was my father. I recovered, and this is largely thanks to his dedication. This experience turned me into a patient advocate. The closer I looked, the more I saw carers providing the same kind of support that my father provided to me, and playing a crucial role in the healthcare system. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that without informal carers like him, our health and social systems would crumble. And yet, they're largely going unrecognized. I am now a long-distance carer for my mother, who suffers from multiple chronic conditions. I understand now, more than ever, the demands that caregivers face. With aging populations, economic instability, healthcare system stress, and increased incidence of long-term chronic care needs, the importance and demands on family caregivers are greater than ever. Carers all over the world are sacrificing their own physical, financial, and psychosocial well-being to provide care for their loved ones. Carers have their own limits and needs, and in absence of adequate support, many could be stretched to the breaking point. Once seen as a personal and private matter in family life, unpaid caregiving has formed the invisible backbone of our health and social systems all over the world. Many of these carers are even in this room, as we have just seen. Who are they, and how many are they? What are the challenges that they are facing? And above all, how can we make sure that their value to patients, our healthcare system, and society is recognized? Anyone can be a carer, really. A 15-year-old girl caring for a parent with multiple sclerosis, a 40-year-old man juggling full-time work while caring for his family who lives far away, a 60-year-old man caring for his wife who has terminal cancer, or an 80-year-old woman caring for her husband who has Alzheimer's disease. The things carers do for their patients are varied. They provide personal care, like getting someone dressed, feeding them, helping them to the bathroom, helping them move about. They also provide a significant level of medical care because they often know a lot about their loved one's condition and needs, sometimes better than the patients themselves, who may be paralyzed or confused by their diagnosis. In those situations, carers are also advocates for the patient. Also of critical importance is the fact that carers also provide emotional support. They organize doctor's appointments, they manage finances, and they also deal with daily household tasks. These challenges are challenges that we can't ignore. There are currently more than 100 million carers providing 80% of care across Europe. And even if these numbers are impressive, they're most likely underestimated given the lack of recognition of carers. As we have just seen, many of you in this room weren't sure if you could be qualified or considered to be a carer. Many of you probably thought I was referring to a nurse or some other healthcare professional. Also stunning are the benefits that carers bring to our societies. And I want to give you just one example from Australia in 2015. The annual value provided by informal carers to those suffering from mental illness was evaluated at 13.2 billion Australian dollars. This is nearly 2 times what the Australian government spends on mental health services annually. These numbers, among others, demonstrate that if carers were to stop caring tomorrow, our health and social systems would crumble. And while the importance of these millions of silent carers cannot be denied, they've largely been unnoticed by governments, healthcare systems, and private entities. In addition, carers are facing enormous personal challenges. Many carers face higher costs and can face financial difficulties given the fact that they may not be able to work full-time or they may not be able to hold down a job altogether. Many studies have shown that often carers sacrifice their own health and well-being in order to care for their loved ones. Many carers spend so much time caring for their loved ones that often their family and their relationships can suffer. Many carers report that often their employers don't have adequate policies in place to support them. There has been improvement, though, in the recognition of carers around the world. Just a few years ago, an umbrella organization called the International Alliance of Care Organizations, or IACO, was formed to bring together care groups from all over the world to provide strategic direction, facilitate information sharing, as well as actively advocate for carers on an international level. Private entities are also starting to recognize the situation of carers. I am proud that my personal engagement and enthusiasm towards this topic of carers found an echo in my own workplace. My company is committed to this cause and has developed an unprecedented framework for its employees and society as a whole. The objective is to empower carers to improve their own health and well-being and bring about a greater balance to their lives. Nevertheless, much more needs to be done to complement these relatively isolated initiatives. Our societies are facing increased health pressures, including aging population, increased incidence of cancer and chronic conditions, widespread inequality, amongst many others. To confront these challenges, policymakers must look beyond traditional healthcare pathways and employment policies and recognize that informal care will continue to form the bedrock of care. Caring for someone should be a choice and should be done without putting one's own well-being in the balance. But to really put the care back into healthcare, what's needed is a deep societal, structural change. And this can only happen through a change in mindset. And this can start today. Today, we can plant the seed for a change for millions of carers around the world. Here's what I want to suggest. When you go home today or to the office tomorrow morning, embrace a carer. Thank them, offer him or her a bit of help, maybe even volunteer as a carer yourself for a couple hours a week. If carers around the world felt better recognized, it would not only improve their own health and well-being and sense of fulfillment, but it would also improve the lives of those that they're caring for. Let's care more. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Welcome back. We are now live and we actually have a guest with us today. We have Sarah Ingalls. She is our CEO and she's joining us today. We still have the other Sarah Marie behind the scenes. So this is of course going to be interaction. We would love for you guys to make comments, ask us questions, and Sarah Marie will feed us those comments and those questions from you guys. But thank you, Sarah, for joining us today. We appreciate you having the time to join Christy and I. So,
pleasure.
I thought this was an interesting topic. This topic kind of goes in so many different directions, but he's made several key points throughout his presentation. And one thing I think for myself and probably others is we probably tend to forget to thank our caregivers, to show them how much we appreciate them, how much we value them, we don't offer that extra help to them sometimes. We don't know what they're going through. And so I know me personally, I'm going to start trying to recognize them and go out of my way to thank them, ask them if they need any help, are they struggling with anything, just to offer that to them. Do either of you guys have any feedback or thoughts from this video that we shared today? Christy, you're on mute.
Thank you. I thought about what he was saying because I have been on both ends. I've taken care of parents and loved ones. I had an accident a couple of years ago and then have needed help from carers, which I think is a new term that I was not familiar with. And there is really something about the sacrifice that they make so willingly, not recognizing the impact that's going to have on them personally, or their families, or their children, or their extended family and friends. Because as we know in our business, caregiving really comes from the heart, and it really can make a huge difference in someone's ability to just function through the day, to have a home that's tidy enough and clean enough to be able to feel good about it, to be able to focus on their own health. And I don't think we really do know how many caregivers that are non-paid voluntary care. It could be a small percentage of their day, it could be a small percentage of their week. But regardless, all of us, I think, are probably going to be in that boat at some point. And I think it's pretty timely, and that's why I'm so happy that Sarah is here, because we have some things happening here in Colorado that I think are really address the importance of caregiving, the passion for it, the need for it, because, as he said, the boomers, the aging population, the higher medical situations, higher acuities of what people are dealing with, and not enough resources. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now, because I really feel like that's the segue of what both Ashley and I have said. So Take it away,
Sure.
Sarah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, there were numerous times throughout the TED Talks, and this is the second time I've watched it. So I think, like anything, I would encourage everyone to go back and watch it again, because I think sometimes you hear different things the second time through. Most of the people who work with me know that my whole life has been about caregiving. I grew up in a nursing home. My dad was a nursing home administrator in the first continuum of care facility in Colorado, and my mom was an RN. And this was before we had CNAs and all of our new rules. Healthcare licensure was not even a thought in the state's eyes. And from there, I went into being a house parent for a group home agency. I had 12 boys at the same time between ages 11 and 19. And we were either their first step before they went back into incarceration, or sometimes we were their step down before they could go back into their home. I then ended up going into being the director of that agency for several years, and then went into foster care, adopted a child, and then went into running a nationwide medical staffing company. The reason I got out of that was I missed this part of it. I did a lot of contracts, and they flew around the United States, and it was great, and it was educational. But the care part was missing, if that makes sense. And that was my upbringing. That's what I believe in, is knowing who we affect, right? Being able to see what we do makes a difference. And I think sometimes we forget that. And so going back into the industry that I'm in now, part of my goal of not only wanting to move up in what I do, but wanting to own an agency, wanting to be a part of the decision making, was really all about going back to empowering our staff. It really is about all those things that both of you talked about, Ashley and Christy. It is about the fact that, people do this work in a home. They're not in front of people, right? So we give, and I'm not tearing down teachers at all, so don't take it this way. I don't want any letters. Teachers are great, right? But we get lots of accolades over teachers because we see them in a visual spot, right? All of our kids go to one place, and we say, oh, isn't it great everything they do? And it is great, but our caregivers are kind of unseen. Our clients are kind of unseen. They're behind walls and doors, and they're up in the middle of the night, and they're working weekends, and they're on call. Our staff is on call 24/7. Nobody really knows who we are because we blend in the population. And I wanted to believe in giving that a voice, right? And so I think you're right, Christy, and some of the things that are happening in Colorado right now, we do want to stand up for. One of the comments he made is caregivers don't get enough support. Well, what does that really look like? Because it's hard to get support when you can't leave your house sometimes, right? It's hard to get support when you're not seen and you're not visual. So we absolutely think that caregivers need to get more recognition. And that includes, dollar amount. That includes being able to live a good quality of life. But it also means support in, I believe, what we do. I believe in what other agencies do, not just us. There's a ton of us out there that really are doing things like looking out for our caregivers' health, providing training opportunities so that they're not alone, being an advocate and a voice, making sure that they get time off, that we can supply relief staff, so that all of those things that he talked about don't go unnoticed. And like you said, we don't know how many are out there that we don't even know about. So absolutely, we need to not assume someone is or isn't a care. And I like the word caregiver, not to diminish what he said, but I don't think that's a bad word. I'm very proud of being a caregiver. I am immensely passionate about that. And I think that that word just needs to be respected more. I don't think we need to change it. I think we need to add some acknowledgement to how hard that job really is.
I definitely agree, Sarah. And I think about people that I know just in my immediate circle of they're either taking care of an adult person, which could be their parent or a parent or two parents that are starting to have some health issues. It can be a parent with a disabled child. It could be an adult disabled child that needs that support. And so frequently we don't really understand what that looks like as you said, that you're on call all the time. And some days are better than others. But I have a friend who essentially has stopped going to the gym, stopped working out. She can't even really go for a walk around her neighborhood because that's the situation that she's living with a parent. And so the idea that she's even just going to go run to the grocery store requires some organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think, again, if you haven't experienced that and you don't understand it yet, we all will. And I think if you just look around your neighborhood or look even at your friends, I think if you were sitting down to coffee with 4 friends and said, so tell me, what level of caregiving do you provide for anybody, friends, family? I think we'd be surprised. And if we got
You're right. We don't look at it, right?
Yeah.
We don't look that way. I'm on the board of our HOA where I live, and we've got people who are recovering from surgery, cancer, different things. And one day I remember on my way to get to work, I stopped by 3 different places and dropped stuff off and went in. And somebody said to me later that day, well, do you still do caregiving? And yes, I do. Not only for the company, because you guys know you call me sometimes I'm leaving a town and you go, hey, can you stop and help this person? And we do. We make a stop. And none of us stop caregiving. But I think we do forget that caregiving isn't limited to what we call as like an employee, right? It's what we do in the community every day. It is taking that dinner over. My dad just had knee replacement, and I have been the runner for a lot of things gladly, right? I'm so glad to be able to do that for them. But it does add to your day, right? You've got to figure out, when am I going to get to the grocery store to pick up those meds and more ice and to cook them a meal, but I don't even have time to cook. So absolutely, it adds on. Tell us a little bit as an RN. You obviously have this background, and we know statistics tell us that caregiving actually can, take years from your life. It can be harder on the caregiver than it is on the person actually with the disease or the disability. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. There are a lot of statistics out there, but not enough, because it has not come to the forefront to really identify, like in Australia, where they figured out $3.2 million is done in non-paid caregiving. And if those caregivers were to go away, the impact on a nation or a country or a town. So it's an incredible service of having organized caregiving for sure. But then recognizing that many times a really dedicated caregiver that is interested in learning about that person's diagnosis, their needs, and their abilities and their disabilities can make the difference between that person declining or maintaining at least what they have, and in many cases, an improvement in the quality of their life, an improvement in their health. There's well-known facts that caregiving and caregiver home care companies make a huge difference in keeping people out of the emergency room or urgent care. You just think about just the simple encouragement of a healthy meal, having more hydration, clean clothes, clean hygiene for your personal self. Those seem like maybe for some people some small little tasks, but you just think about your own life and how important it is and how lucky we are to be able to get up and take a shower in the morning all by ourselves and have our hair shampooed and get a decent meal, and that we are taking our medications. That's a big one, that we are taking the right medications at the right time throughout the day, and someone is tracking that for us, but in the meantime not robbing us of our or a client of their independence, because they want to at home, they want to take care of themselves, they want to get better. So I think the impact is huge, and I agree with you, Sarah. We need to figure out how to acknowledge that and provide that level of support on a broader base so that all of us understand the impact and the importance of that.
I'm a big component, and I'm sure that Ashley, being out in the field and meeting people runs into this too, but I feel constantly that I'm defending agencies and saying that no, we're not this thing, this business, that all of us are caregivers, nurses, we have LPNs, we have former ambulance drivers, we have, we're made up of a myriad of people that really believe in what we do. And part of it is ensuring that exactly what you talked about, that we remind our staff that we say, hey, we can provide the backup so that like your friend can go take a shower, get a walk in, right? Be able to, if you're burned out, how do you give to someone else when you don't have anything for you? And that's really something that we talk a lot about in a company. And I just wish that, in all honesty, the industry as a whole had that same support that we give to our staff or make available. They don't have to take it, obviously, but just the fact to know that it's there, right? Additional training when maybe the person you're caring for, their condition has changed. And I think sometimes it's, well, these agencies are getting rich, or they're the middleman. And we do have a lot of regulations, right? I'm preaching to the choir with everyone here, because our binder of regulations is this big, and a lot of rules are not our rules. They're actually Colorado's rules. They're actually the Department of Health, their healthcare policy and finance rules, their workers' comp, labor laws, all of these things that we have to balance with also doing what's right for the client, patient, doing what's right for the caregiver. And that is a balance, isn't it? And I know, Ash, you're out in the field all the time talking to hospitals and docs, and they know the shortage that we have right now too. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about, where you see people maybe, we just don't have enough, and part of it is exactly what Christy's talking about. It's that balance that they have to do between work and life. And
yes, I did want to make a couple points that in a way I am caring out in the field, because I'm out in the field and I'm educating people about these resources that are available that they might not know about. So I'm that advocate. I'm that voice to say, oh, did you know we have these services available to relieve you for that stress and be able to financially be, not financially, but like financially set and not have to stress about money and finances and time and availability and all of that. And so that's where I come into play, is when I'm out there caring as an advocate, letting people know.
You also bring in groups to us too, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but that's a big part of your job, right? Is you bring in different resources to our company and to our clients and to our caregivers that maybe they didn't know about existed. And that's a huge piece of what your position is.
Yeah.
That is true. And a little bit about me is I personally have not cared for somebody, but I've actually had somebody care for me 3.5 years ago when I'm young, I'm independent, I didn't need any help, and I pretty much said that. And my mom willingly stepped up and cared for me for 8 months. And I always was like, how am I going to ever repay you for everything you did for me? And she's like, you know what? When I need the help and I get old, that you can repay it back. And I said, you got it, Mom. And I'm forever grateful that I was able to have my mom step in and care for me full time for 8 months, because there was so much that I was not able to do on my end. And I feel, in a way, that is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is me paying it forward and giving back, because of everything that I was given to. I can go out and educate people that when you need help, you need help. It doesn't matter your age, your background, your situation. When you need help, it's there. And it takes a lot. It is a full-time job to go care for somebody. And you have to have the heart and the intentions to do it. And not everybody's capable of doing that. And it takes time. And that's, not everybody has that background and that to be able to, they might have the heart, but they might not have the skills. And that's where, we come in and provide those trainings and the skills to let them know what they can do to provide that care for that individual. So those are my, and I wanted to apologize, technology, I had lost my connection previously, so I apologize, but I'm back now.
Well, that was great, Ashley, and I'm glad you came back when you did, because, I can just feel your your passion and your energy about it. And you're absolutely right. We all provide care in a really different way, but it's still, at the heart of it, caring. We are caring about someone or a situation or the growth of a caregiver so that they can learn more. And I think one of the most rewarding situations for me is when we maybe have a daughter or a husband or a nephew or whomever come into caregiving because there's been a situation in their family and they're thinking, I can do this, I want to do this for my person. But then when that person heals up and is out of the program or out of the services, or unfortunately sometimes passes away, when that person says, you know what, I want to be a caregiver for someone else. I have the heart for this. I understand how important it is. And we've had that happen many, many times where someone has said, I've lost my wife, but I want to provide this same level of support, whatever that looks like. And so you know that there are lots of really wonderful people out there, and we want to support them. We want to encourage them, and we want to be able to have that support when they're in the middle of that situation, or whether they come on as a paid caregiver. It doesn't matter. It's the caring and the nurturing and the support that is needed across the board.
One of the other things that came out for me in this video too is he talked a lot about the kind of the commitment or the emotion or the dedication. And, Ash, you touched on that. And, Christy, so did you, as far as when you were receiving care. And I think one of the things that we all can do, and that doesn't matter if you're a caregiver, if you're not, I think it's listening, right? It's listening to people who are either receiving care and understanding and having empathy for what they're going through and how they feel, and letting them talk about what it's meant to them, right? And also on the other side, for a caregiver, I think listening to sometimes what seems minor is a really major thing in their life, right? And I think that just by having empathy, just by lending an ear, letting someone talk. I mean, I know as an agency, we do that a lot. We really read between the lines because there are frustrations and disappointments, life disappointments. We've watched children grow up over years with these babies, and they're getting older, and now they're challenged to have to fit into a society that doesn't really accept them. And not only do we go through that with them, but we watch their parents feel helpless. And, I love the fact that we can advocate at an IEP meeting for them, that we can advocate with a PCP who maybe only gets to see them once in a while and doesn't know all of the issues, or talk about with somebody, hey, can you cut them a break on the ramp? They can't afford to do that. So I think it's all of those things that, to me, sometimes just listening and providing some suggestions, but really just being empathetic is sometimes what our world really lacks, right? We all have social media trolls now. Everybody can say bad things. We don't hear the good things as much. And I think that's just the nature of where things are. But you're right. I think saying thank you, acknowledging something, listening, being able to just really understand to the best of your ability. No one is going to understand, Ash, what you went through. And what you did, unless they did it exactly the same way. And even then it's a different story, right? We've learned from our clients that it doesn't matter if you have the same ailment or disease or problem. Everybody's journey is different, right? So every brain injury is different. Every cancer is different. Every mental illness is different. And we have to adjust accordingly. Not only for our clients in that and what their wishes are and how they want to start their day. Christy, to your point of, I can't imagine not starting my day and keeping my day with coffee, right? Everyone knows me, that's my thing. I can't even fathom that. And yet we have clients that if we're not there, not only do they not get out of bed, they don't get that privilege to say, this is how I want to do it. And we want to empower them to have that. So it really is about listening to what they want, being an advocate at our state in the United States, not only in Colorado, but everywhere, in trying to do what's best for people who maybe can't speak up. They can't get to the Capitol. They don't have a voice. They really don't even have internet, right? We all know we have people that struggle even to get connectivity where we serve them in Baca or Route or Moffett. So I think it's really important what we all do in that process. And I know, Christy, you know firsthand as well as Ashley, because you guys are out, you know, and we all do, but meeting with the clients on a daily basis and seeing that.
Mm-hmm. I do want to interrupt, and because we still have Sarah on the back end, Sarah Marie, and I just want to chime in. Sarah Marie, did we have any comments or any questions that you could share with us from anybody?
Nope, not so far. I think you guys are doing awesome.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
We coach like that in the background, don't they? No, you're awesome. You're doing great. I just want her to follow me around all day and go, that was great.
You're doing fabulous.
Great. Awesome.
Thumbs up.
Right?
You know, I guess I would just conclude this really fun, riveting conversation for me, because it's all part of what we all believe in and love. It goes back to, in nursing and in healthcare, we learned something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it seems simple, but if someone is just barely getting by and cannot care for themselves, they can't think about the bigger pieces of internet service or communicating with the neighbor down the road, or having coffee with someone, or writing a letter to their congressman or their representative or their senator to kind of explain their particular situation. They are in the trenches trying to function. And the same is true with the caregivers. They are so caught up in what they need to do and have to do that sometimes those other pieces just seem really hard to do. Like, a lot of energy will take time, and that time maybe needs to be in just monitoring Dad because he wanders outside the home and on the stovetop, or take the wrong meds, or get into something. And so I think we really need to address that as a whole, as people in our community that care about each other, our government, our policymakers, from top to bottom. So
Absolutely.
that's how I would end it. And everybody go out there and hug a caregiver.
Right. I heard someone say, why do you guys take things so personally last week? And I thought, because it is. It is personal. Right? If you talk to anybody, it is personal. That's why we do what we do, right? And so that question is, to me, foreign, because we don't know how people don't do something that they can't be 100% passionate about, right? Like, I'm so privileged, like we all are, to really feel like we're in the trenches and we're making a difference, and it's hard. So I want to say thank you, not only to all of our staff and our caregivers that, you know, I don't get to see every day because we're spread out throughout the whole state. So it's very difficult, other than our annual trainings once a year. And even then, we don't get to see everybody. But I want to say thank you for all you do. And I think it's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we need to start wrapping this up, but I do want to make one thought before I share our next month's People Talks. Is, you know, behind every great story is an amazing caregiver that touched their lives in so many ways. So that's my final thought that I wanted to leave with you guys. But please join us next month on May 23rd at 10 a.m. again. We will do another live broadcast. So we look forward to seeing you guys next month, May 23rd at 10 a.m. Do you ladies have any other final thoughts before we call it a day?
Just go hug a caregiver.
That's
Yes.
right. You're all doing a wonderful job. Keep caring.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of the day. Tune
Thank
in
you.
next
Too.